panel, but since Ken, you are on the panel, I'll ask you anyway. You wrote a nice little book called The Curse of Cash. And in this environment, cash is disappearing. So what's your advice?
Well, isn't it wonderful that the people who organized this event had a panel just before us about this? But no, I think one of the things that's been very naive about I will call them crypto evangelists, is that they can somehow do something better and have an end around. And in fact, if you look at the history of money, which is probably what I should have called my book, and you look at the private sector always invents everything, but for many reasons, the governments eventually regulate it and even sometimes appropriate it. And I think, that's what we're seeing going forward in the digital space. You need rules of the road. And I was going to bring it up earlier, but I have to mention FTX. That was kind of a success for the regulatory community. It didn't do anything. It's the $32 billion at the heart of the crypto system just had no effect. And I think it shows how you need some regulatory structure to provide guardrails and
the Bundesbank. Let me put it like this. I think it was already said by Ken Rockoff. I think inflation is back now. We are more or less, in my interpretation, still in the midst of a storm, and the storm is not over. So we have to do our job, our main mandate. This is our role. During the last 10, 12 years, we were the most welcome partners of the politicians, because we, in our independent role, we did everything to fight against all the financial crisis and did what we did. But this came with a price. And now in the next years, the politicians have to learn that monetary policy is coming with a price. So maybe some of us, they have to announce that there are maybe losses or not the profits we came up in the past. What is your opinion about that? Is that influencing the way we are being perceived in the future about our independency?
Wants to take that on?
Well, I'll take it on. It's related to something that I said, which is that the pressures from politicians will be greater and more complex today than they were in the 1990s. And you're absolutely right. But I don't think it's an issue about the mandate of the central bank. That is unchanged. It's that some people in positions of political responsibility will learn that life can be difficult. But I don't really see that there is a great wish anywhere to change the formal independence of central banks. But politicians will always want other people to do things that would benefit their own short-run interests. That's where central banks will remain solid and maintain their independence in respect of monetary policy. And they have every incentive to do so, in my view.
Okay.
So I'll just conclude by saying that for us, central bank independence is a matter of statute. It's not in our Constitution. It's just an institutional arrangement that has served the public well, nothing more, nothing less. And as long as it does serve the public well over time, then I think it's safe, and I think it's safe now. But that means we've got to be committed to achieving our goals and to sticking to this precious grant of independence. To keep it, we need to deserve it, and that means stick to that work and don't look for broader things. Where it was discussed at the first panel, really, we shouldn't be getting ahead of where the public is if there's no specific mandate. And in the case of the U.S., that's a particularly salient point today.
So we will destroy, unfortunately, a lot of employment. Just think of self-guided cars and all the drivers losing their jobs. Let's look at the bank employees and so on.
If you're left behind, you're facing something far worse, which is to be completely irrelevant. They won't even need you as a serf or as a slave.
Welcome to the Crypto Teacher. And you know I come back with that video just to make you think.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.
And we had Jerome in the house today talking about the independence of the Fed. No longer will the politician control the Fed policy. Guys, are the politicians control the Fed or the Fed control the politicians? We know if you're printing the money, they're controlling the politicians. Politicians are nothing but puppets. But guys, we know when it comes to the Fed, it's very boring. We know the masses don't even know who a Jerome Powell is, even though he's printing your money. And this whole Fed independence is all surrounded by the pain that this global market is about to take because of these rising interest rates and the rolling off this balance sheet. Remember the goal, guys, which they never talk about, is the fourth industrial revolution. They have to put all these people out of work in order to bring in the robots, algorithms, and drones. And like Ken stated, he thinks it's funny that these private projects think they're going to take over the central banks. And guys, it is funny. The only way that would happen if the masses wake up. That's the reason why the Fed even got in control in the first place in 1913. We know all these projects the big banks and corporations were funding in the first place. And don't forget, guys, almost 3 years ago, we had the Fed tap BlackRock in order to buy stocks, ETFs, which is flat out illegal. The Fed made BlackRock the third hand of the government. And like Jerome Powell stated, the Fed is not in the Constitution because we know that's illegal. The Treasury is supposed to be printing the money and controlling the money. Now, because the central banks are controlling the money supply, they can do an expansion. And we've seen it several times since the Fed's existence. And we just came off the longest expansion in history. Also, we watched the greatest wealth transfer in history right in front of our eyes. What we're going through right now, we've never seen in the history of the globe, because the masses have never been so dumbed down in history. Tell your friends and family to turn off the television and get in the lab, because we're about to go through the worst economic times in American history over the next 2 to 3 years because they want the machines to take over. Remember, in the system that we're in right now, if the people decided not to go to work, guess what? Everything shuts down. So the power is still in the hands of the slave. But guess what? When the robots, algorithms, and drones take over, all that power is gone. Like you've all stated, they won't even need you as a slave. And you know, I give you the truth. Nothing but the truth. Yes, the truth hurts, but it sets you free. But when I give you the truth, you hate me. My people perish from the lack of knowledge because they reject it. In the age that we're in right now, guys, we have all the information right at our fingertips. But unfortunately, we're so distracted on things that don't matter. And that's going to allow the central banks to end America to Babylon, along with the world reserve currency. And we're going to see China and the emerging markets, the BRICS nations, rise, along with that digital yuan backed by that digital SDR. And remember, the Cryptoteacher wrote about it a long time ago. Also, he told you on this channel a long time ago, because he knows when it comes to the New World Order, it's all planned out. You have a wonderful day.
And I wonder whether today we're reaching the younger population and explain to them why central bank independence is so important. And I think that's also part of our outreach that we have to do.
Jay? So I'll admit to not really answering the third question. But I'll take a shot at it now if I can. The question being, did either the global financial crisis or the pandemic and the responses to them, does it suggest that there are problems with the mandate, unforeseen tensions between either financial stability and monetary policy and that sort of thing? And I guess I would take the position that would not be my takeaway at all. I think what happened in both crises is that central bankers used their tools pretty innovatively to deal with exceptionally unforeseen and difficult circumstances. I think the main takeaway from the global financial crisis was the need to build far more resilient core of the financial system. And we did that. The banks did that. We did that. All over the world, people did that. And I think that financial system is now substantially more resilient and more strong at its core. I think it held up better in the pandemic as a result. The pandemic was a different thing. It was it called for a whole of government response from a medical standpoint, and it called for use of fiscal policy and monetary policy tools in unprecedented ways. There had been a concern in the United States that Dodd-Frank had too limited the Fed's authority under Section 13.3 to do facilities and lending. The new system actually worked quite well. What it did was it required the Treasury's, the elected part of the government's approval for these emergency lending facilities, and that actually worked very well. And that's actually an appropriate thing, because these are extraordinary measures. We only have the authority during emergencies, and to have the elected government approving it, it was a very constructive process between us and Treasury. So I guess to take a step back, I think that the tools that we have work. I think there's nothing wrong with our mandates. I don't see anything about the laws that govern us or provide our mandates that needs to be changed, and it seems to have worked pretty well in these two very difficult circumstances. And focusing on the U.S. context, and I'll address three main points. First, the Federal Reserve's monetary policy independence is an important and broadly supported institutional arrangement that has served the American public well. Second, the Fed must continuously earn that independence by using our tools to achieve our assigned goals of maximum employment and price stability, and by providing transparency to facilitate understanding and effective oversight by the public and their elected representatives in Congress. Third, we should stick to our knitting and not wander off to pursue perceived social benefits that are not tightly linked to our statutory goals and authorities. So, starting with the first point, as Ken and others have pointed out, on the first point, the case for monetary policy independence lies in the benefits of insulating monetary policy decisions from short-term political considerations. Price stability is the bedrock of a healthy economy and provides the public with immeasurable benefits over time. But restoring price stability when inflation is high can require measures that are not popular in the short term, as we raise interest rates to slow the economy. The absence of direct political control over our decisions allows us to take these necessary measures without considering short-term political factors. And I believe that the benefits of independent monetary policy in the United States and more broadly around the world are well understood and broadly accepted. However, in a well-functioning democracy, important public policy decisions should be made in almost all cases by the elected branches of government. Grants of independence to agencies like ours should be exceedingly rare, explicit, tightly circumscribed, and limited to those issues that clearly warrant protection from short-term political considerations. With independence comes the responsibility to provide the transparency that enables effective oversight, in our case by Congress, which in turn supports the Fed's democratic legitimacy. And at the Fed, we treat this as an active, not a passive responsibility. Over the past several decades, we've steadily broadened our efforts to provide meaningful transparency about the basis for and the consequences of the decisions that we make in service to the American people. We are tightly focused on achieving our statutory mandate and on providing useful and appropriate transparency. On the third point, it is essential that we stick to our statutory goals and authorities, and that we resist the temptation to broaden our scope to address other important social issues of the day. Taking on new goals, however worthy, without a clear statutory mandate would undermine the case for our independence. In the area of bank regulation, as Tobias mentioned, the Fed has a degree of independence, as do the other federal bank regulators. Independence in this area helps ensure that the public can be confident that our supervisory decisions are not influenced by political considerations. And today, some analysts ask whether incorporating into bank supervision the perceived risks associated with climate change is appropriate, wise, and consistent with our existing mandates. Addressing climate change seems likely to require policies that would have significant distributional and other effects on companies, on industries, on regions, and on nations. Decisions about policies to directly address climate change should be made by the elected branches of government and thus reflect the public's will as expressed through elections. At the same time, in my view, the Fed does have a narrow but important responsibilities regarding climate-related financial risks. These responsibilities are tightly linked to our responsibilities for bank supervision. The public reasonably expects supervisors to require that banks understand and can appropriately manage their material risks, including the financial risks of climate change. But without explicit congressional legislation, it would be inappropriate for us to use our monetary policy or supervisory tools, for example, to promote a greener economy or to achieve other climate-based goals. We are not, and we will not be, a climate policy maker. Thank you. We're going to a different economy, and we're going to be learning more about that as we go, but clearly we're learning that things can be done from remote locations. We're learning that technology can replace people even more than we thought.
We're not going back to the same economy. We're recovering, but to a different economy, and it'll be one that is more leveraged to technology. And I worry that that is going to make it even more difficult than it was for many workers.
In Silicon Valley, and my friends who work in technology know that what we did to the manufacturing workers, we are now going to do to the retail workers, the call center workers, the fast food workers, the truck drivers, and then even bookkeepers, accountants, insurance agents, lawyers, and on through the economy. So what happened to the manufacturing workers is a very clear sign.
This effort, and China has big plans for this. They intend to seed their digital yuan into the global environment by giving it away to visitors at next winter's Olympics. When they arrive at the airport, they're going to get yuan digital wallets. They're going to receive digital yuan. They're going to use it throughout their visits to Beijing, and then they're going to take it back to their home countries. They see this as a huge advantage. Why? Because who controls the underlying protocols, who controls the underlying standards of the future of money will control the future of money.
Most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, values, and agenda of an entire generation to come. Steve Jobs. And guys, you know I truly believe in this. When you look at the New World Order, they're the storytellers. And that's the reason why I wrote my New World Order book. But guys, now it's time to change the current generation. And I wrote 3 kids' books. You know I love the Trinity because I understand the power that's in it. So I have 3 books. We have an opportunity to change the generation, to educate, not just me, but I want to show you that I take action on a daily basis. And I want you to take action on a daily basis. Whether it's your job, whether it's in your community, we have an opportunity right now to educate the masses. I posted this on my Twitter account. Please share, but this is a short clip of the 3 books. There's going to be a clothing line and action figures. Please get these books for your kids, nephews, cousins, friends, so therefore we can start the re-education now. Because as we see, the 4th Industrial Revolution foundation is definitely here. Robots, algorithms, drones, taking humanity out the picture. We have to re-educate. But let's get into the video.
Part 1. King Joshua and Grandma Tam save the village. Part 2. King Joshua and Grandma Tam save New York from COVID-33. Part 3. King Joshua and Grandma Tam goes to China.
It's mandatory to get part 1, part 2, and part 3 of this series. It's time to re-educate Generation Z.